Thank you all for coming. As you know, we are recording this and we will share it with other folks who couldn't come at this particular time. This webinar the title of it is Voices of Caregivers, Stories of Strength and Resilience. And there's 4 of the caregivers from Caring for the Caregiver, which is the program that Daybreak runs, and everybody out there in the world that needs such a thing, you're welcome to let us know and perhaps join one of our groups. This is 3 times a week. And Karen is here and she leads that group. And the 4 people participating today are all from that setting. And we're so grateful to them for sharing their stories. We're going to start with 2 of them that are recorded because, as you know, the lives of caregivers are very demanding and difficult. So the 2 of them did theirs at home and recorded it for us. So again, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. And Loada, we're ready for the first share. There we go. Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gayle, and I care for my husband, Robert. I met this group through the San Leandro Senior Center in 2019 when they had a series called Caring for the Caregiver, which I very badly needed. And I went to the group hoping they could tell me, how to make all this stress and everything stop. And what I've learned is probably a lot more about myself than I have about anything else. And the support of this group with the weekly meetings has been instrumental in me coming to a place where I'm at peace with caregiving. And I have my happy days and not so happy days, but I've learned a great deal. And there's a couple of things that I wanted to share with you today. First of all, my husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's about 7 years ago, and he's treated through the VA. He's considered a service disability veteran, and they're now thinking he doesn't have Parkinson's. They're thinking that it could be something else, maybe like multiple symptom atrophy on the spectrum of Parkinson's. So we're going for MRI for that. It won't change much. He has dementia, he has a severe hearing loss, and he can't do anything for himself at this point. I have some help during the week, a home health aide who's been absolutely wonderful. And before I go into the 2 things that I think are really important to let you know, something that Susan Musicant and Karen Keller told me in the caregiver group was, we think it's time for you to get a social worker. And getting a social worker through the VA changed everything. I didn't know about the home health aides. I didn't know about, which is available to people with service-connected injuries. I didn't know a lot of the benefits that were available. So whatever your insurance is, always be sure you're seeing a social worker and see because they know all the resources and they know what can help most. The 2 things I want to mention today is one about durable powers of attorney, and the other is about reframing. The first one, I didn't realize how close I was to the wire. My husband was diagnosed 7 years ago. He started experiencing dementia about 3 years ago, just little things here and there. And then last fall, it got to be pretty obvious, but he could still express his wishes. We saw an attorney for a durable power of attorney for healthcare and finance. And he says, I think you're just coming in under the wire. Any further along, and he would have to have his own attorney, or we'd have to go to court and do something with the judge to get it declared, because I need to know what he wants. I need to know what his wishes are. And when somebody has dementia and they can't declare what their wishes are, or they can't communicate in a way that satisfies the attorney, you can't get a POA. At least you're going to go down a long road, which is more expensive. It takes more time, and it involves probably another attorney to represent your loved one. So simple and less expensive to get it done while they can still express their wishes. And this is a durable power of attorney for healthcare, a durable power of attorney for finance. And if you have property, a living trust, which avoids probate. And of course, if you avoid probate, you avoid relatives and everybody else coming in after you lose your loved one. trying to change things other than what you wanted. So it's really important to have that POA for healthcare and finance. It opens all the doors at the hospital. It opens up the doors everywhere where you can say, I can take care of this. It's my, it's my decision to make. Another thing is my husband's neurologist said he was really glad we had it done because he has a client whose husband has dementia and she actually Alzheimer's, and he was becoming extremely difficult to take care of. She wanted to put him into memory care, but they didn't have the income. And they could, though, take a reverse mortgage. And they had a lot of asset to take reverse mortgage. Only she couldn't take a reverse mortgage because her husband had dementia and he had never done a POA for finance. I don't know how that ever worked out for them. They probably went to court, probably got a judgment, probably got another attorney, but that's delays and more money. So you want to avoid that if all possible. And get one for yourself. I have one now for myself. If anything happens to me, my brother can just come in and take over. We also got our cremation packages done. It's less expensive when it's done early. And when you lose someone, the last thing you want to be thinking of is burial, cremation, all of that. And it's just such a load off my mind to know everything's in the safe, everything is taken care of, and I don't have to worry about it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the process I went through to reframe how I felt about my marriage and caregiving and how I was going to get through this process of basically losing the person that I've been with for 37 years. I met someone in my caregiver group who really had a wonderful philosophy about taking care of his mother. And I kept thinking, I want that for myself. How do I get that? How do I make that work? And it took time, but a catalyst was losing my best friend last year of 40 years. She had an autoimmune disease and she's a fighter, and I've known her since 1982. And she was my best friend. I've known her longer than my husband. And when we lost Linda, it was such a shock. It was just shock. And over the next 6 months, dealing with her husband, who was also a dear friend, and his grief, and planning her memorial because her family was too upset to pull it together. So I got the girlfriend patrol. We did that. But going through all that, I realized after about 6 months, my goodness, I went through the grief process. It's a real thing. I didn't have it with my parents. They were in their 90s. I mean, they lived a long, happy, long life. But I had it with Linda, and it was such shock. And then it was, there was some denial in there. And after that, it was grief, just a lot of grief, sadness. I wanted to call her. I talked to her several times a week. I wanted to call her and tell her things. And then finally acceptance, where now I just kind of remember the happy things. What would Linda do? What would Linda say? And I realized when I came out the other side of this, that I had been experiencing this for a couple of years with my husband. I had been in shock about his diagnosis and then denial. No, he's good. He's strong. He was a marathon runner and he can do anything. He's different, than grief. And in there, which I didn't have with Linda. Well, I did have it with Linda for a while. Resentment. Like, how could you do this to me? So I was just resentful and I was angry. And, I can't believe I have to go through this, but yet guilt, because after all, this is my husband. I want to take care of him. I want him to have a good life. And then finally acceptance. But I had to grieve that I was what someone in my group had called a married widow. We're married widows. We've lost our partners. And I had to look at the fact that I was a married widow, and that whatever he said in his dementia, which he doesn't do this much, but if he said something that hurt me, it's not my husband, it's the disease. Whatever he did that might be insulting, whatever he did that might be embarrassing, whatever he did that might be something that just wasn't the person I've known all these years, I realized I've lost that relationship. That relationship is not there. Yesterday we talked maybe 5 words because he's got speech aphasia too. He can't talk well. A lot of motioning, a lot of hand signals, to communicate. And I realized that I'm no longer in a marriage. I'm no longer in a role of a wife. I have moved into the role of a nurse. And when I realized that, a lot of the guilt went away, and a lot because I realized I'm doing a good job here. I'm doing a really good job. And I've got a home health aide who comes in during the week too for a few hours and some hours, and she helps. And I realized I'm doing what Cherie's doing. I'm being a nurse. And when I went on, I took a vacation. All caregivers need a break. And I didn't feel guilty, and I felt great being away, and it felt wonderful. And I realized she can do anything I can do. We're nurses. And that really helped me let go of the sadness, and the grief and the upset and the hurt, realizing that I'm now in a nursing role. And one thing I realized is that my husband is still there. But what I'm doing is I'm taking care of the broken vessel that holds the soul of my husband. And as long as I can do that, I am happy to do that. And I do have some support from a home health aide. It's amazing how much that helps when she's like a second pair of hands, but she's more than that. I joke that she's my Mrs. Doubtfire. It's amazing to have someone that comes in and gives you a break. But I'm realizing now that I'm doing what she's doing. I'm a nurse. And my memories of our adventures and all the things we've done together is what carries me on. But what is happening right now, but Karen put it really well. She said, you're in it, but you're not of it. And that's how I feel. I'm in this situation, but I'm not of this situation. I don't have to be of it. I'm in it, taking care of it, but it doesn't define who I am. I'm still Gayle. I still have all the things I love to do. I still have my interests. I still get excited about things. I take my breaks whenever I can get them. And the rest of the time, there are good days and there are bad days. There's good days where I get a lot of sleep. There's bad days where I get no sleep. It's up and down, up and down, up and down, but that's life. That's just like life. It mirrors life, the challenges of life. So I don't expect to be happy all the time. I don't expect to have this figured out all the time, but I do expect that I know it's possible to manage it. I'm not expecting it to be cured, but I just want to know it's possible that I can manage it, and I can absolutely do that. And what's critical for me too is going to my caregiver support group every week. And I was so grateful when Karen opened up another day that I can attend, because the other 2 days were difficult, and it just makes a huge difference to me. So I wish you well in your caregiving journey. I hope that you have a support group that can help you, that you can be involved with, because it makes all the difference. They give you so many ideas of things that you didn't know that existed, and things that will help you. So I hope that some of this helped you, and I wish you well in your caregiving journey. Thank you.
That was Gayle Hudson. She's a member of our Daybreak Caregiver Support Group, Caring for the Caregiver. And that was truly inspiring. Our next one will be from Lasell Whipple. And I think you'll find a lot there that will also be deeply helpful for you. And it's clear to me that this storytelling has been very helpful and healing for them. Let's go ahead with Lasell's recording. Thank you so much, Lawada.
Hi, my name is Lasell, and I want to share with you my caregiving story. A few years ago, my husband John was suddenly diagnosed with severe bilateral glaucoma. We were in shock, and he started slowly adapting to his blindness, learning how to walk with a white cane. Then about 6 months later, he was diagnosed with orthostatic hypotension, which ultimately led 8 months and many doctor appointments later to a diagnosis of pure autonomic failure. Besides having a horrible name, pure autonomic failure is a rare degenerative disorder of the nervous system, causing extremely low blood pressure, chronic dizziness, and a progressive breakdown of systems that the body generally handles automatically. All of these conditions came out of the blue, with no cause, no cure, not connected in any way, and guaranteed to get worse over time. Talk about a double whammy. It was as as if a deadly tsunami hit a tiny island village, and then 2 years later, as a total fluke, a meteorite smashed into the same town. My husband was once a skilled woodworker, voracious reader, and master gardener. He's now blind, frail, chronically exhausted, and dizzy, and mostly bedridden. It breaks my heart that his quality of life is so diminished. The sudden blindness was enough. I was barely holding it together, starting to feel some serious caregiver burnout, when we were given this other devastating news, and I plunged into a lousy 2-month depression. I needed to be taking care of John, and here I was such a wreck, I felt like I needed to be taking care of myself. I felt like the bottom of my life had dropped out. But eventually, I was able to crawl out, one muddy step at a time, and regain my strength to be there for John. As the weeks went by, I started to suffer from what I call CPTSD, or caregiver post-traumatic stress disorder. I felt as if everything was an accident waiting to happen, as if I was Chicken Little and the sky really had fallen on us twice in the last 2 years. After all we'd been through, what else could go wrong? When I drove around running errands, I'd brace myself for the worst, a deadly collision or a pothole that would open up and swallow up the car. It took months for the Chicken Little syndrome to fade to the background. They call it the hardest job you'll ever have. Even if the person you care for is fairly independent, even if you're not feeding, bathing, and diapering, you're still on call 24/7 and still worrying 24/7. Did he turn off the stove? What if he falls? Is he still breathing? Being constantly tethered to the person you're caring for, even if only psychologically, can be exhausting and cause for resentment. And when you're a caregiver, it's hard to be a child or spouse of the one you're taking care of. You may need to toggle your roles off and on. Caregiving has shifted my perspective on life. All our lives we have been taught to believe that when something goes wrong, we can fix it, or that a doctor can make it better. But as a caregiver, you can't fix your loved one, or prevent them from declining, or make them happy. Your role is to take care of their needs, to be there with compassion. You're forced to get comfortable with chaos, with not knowing, but all the while knowing that things are bound to get worse. There are endless anxieties and fears and uncertainties in caregiving. All you really have is today, here and now. I'd be remiss not to mention that during our time of personal trauma, just as we dared to take off our masks after 3 years of COVID, the world had gone crazy with environmental devastation, a brutal war, democracy threatened, weekly mass shootings, and fascism on the rise, to name a few. Talk about global PTSD. It was, and actually still is, like the whole world is on cortisol overdrive. All the more reason to be here now. All we have is today. That's true for everyone, but nothing like a life-threatening health crisis to force you to live it, not just intellectually understand it. One day I came up with this mantra which helped me balance my grief and my need to survive. It says, mourn the losses and be grateful for what you have left. Everything is frustrating for John at best. Using his phone, making coffee, trying to find the mayonnaise in the fridge, tripping over the cat on the rug. I do my best to try and make life easier for him, reorganizing shelves, teaching him to use Siri to call his friends, laying down treads on the front steps. But I'm learning that I need to come up with new solutions each time he gets weaker and or blinder. I went through a period of being angry at John because he can't be the strong one for me anymore. I have to be the strong one for both of us, all the time, every day. He's sick and dying, and he'll never be able to catch me when I fall again. And that's terrifying. How do you witness misery without being sucked down the hole of despair? It's taken me months to get to the point where I can accept his struggle with compassion, wherever he happens to be on his downward slide. As his disease has progressed, John has gotten more anxious, more easy to fly off the handle, more ready to give up and just go to bed. He's always checking with me, has the food been put away? Are the outdoor hoses turned off? Is the back door locked? I need to understand that all that checking and rechecking is not so much a criticism of me, although it often feels that way, but more about John wanting to hold on to some kind of control in his diminished life. For better or worse, it's his way of staying engaged. In the last month, John has gotten weaker, sleeping most of the day except to get up for frequent painful peeing, watching TV, and wobbling to get from room to room. "It's getting worse, and I'm freaking out," he's been saying. "How can I help you?" I ask. "You're doing it," he says. So my new mantra is, I honor your struggle, and I'm here to help if you need me. He keeps reminding me that when he needs help, he'll ask for it. Fair enough, but that means I still have to bear witness to his suffering as he works his way through it. I've learned not to wince every time I hear him struggle. Several months in, I wonder, what if I embrace this role of caregiving instead of fighting it tooth and nail? What if I treat it as a proper job and lay out what my terms are to make this work for me? How's this for a job description? No pay, no benefits, on call 24/7, guaranteed exhaustion, guaranteed heartbreak. Yikes! But this is how I'm spending my time these days, so I need to give thought to how I can make this situation work for me. In the last year, I feel like I've groped my way through a tunnel of trauma, and I'm now seeking light at the other end, thanks to friends' support and some practices I've developed over time. For months, I searched online for a support group and finally stumbled on Daybreak, which has been a godsend. Led by a superbly gifted facilitator, Karen Kelleher, the group offers so much power and comfort in connecting with others who are in the same boat. Around the same time, I started listening to Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn, which I found to be an exquisite balm for my addled brain. The book inspired me to start writing morning pages and to practice mindfulness and meditation, all of which tease out the tangles in my life and keep me grounded. When John's sight got so bad that he couldn't see enough to garden, I stepped in to tend to our backyard. Although I felt woefully inadequate in the shadow of John's gardening expertise, I managed to create a funky but flourishing garden, a sweet oasis for birds and bees. Twice a week, I religiously attend senior strength training workouts at the Y. I find getting out of my head and into my body is at least as beneficial to my mind as my muscles. And I take naps. I take lots and lots of naps. You can't do this alone. Self-care and finding support through a group or through friends are really non-negotiable. I needed to hear this over and over again until I took it to heart. The best thing you can do for you and your loved ones is to carve out me time. Figure out what you need, what brings you joy, and find a way to get out of the house and reclaim your soul. You'll be a much better caregiver if you do. And you may be totally consumed in your caregiver role, but it's important that you start to think about the next chapter in your life. Start with a small fantasy and take baby steps to make that fantasy a reality. I like to look at cabin rentals on the coast of Maine. Finally, there have been some unexpected gifts in the last year. Odd as it may sound, caregiving has given me a clear purpose in life. And for all the shock and horror, John's medical traumas have made our relationship sweeter, closer, and more tender. We can still have lively, thoughtful conversations about life, politics, the world. We can still intellectually dance with each other. John is the love of my life, and I didn't want to forget all the great times we had had when he was healthy, so I made a point of looking at old photos together. And then when he couldn't see those, I started sharing my journal entries from our adventures over 35 years. It's been a way to celebrate our relationship, to remember that we have a tremendous history and that he is not his disease. I truly believe that caregiving is heartbreaking, but also heart-opening. You may not have wanted this role, but you may, for the first time, like me, understand how truly fragile and precious life is.
Ah, amazing. Thank you so much, Lasell. She has shared this recording with us just as Gayle has. She will definitely have a chance to see this recording and your responses. Thank you all. And now we will have a chance for Elizabeth Becker, also a member of Caring for the Caregiver, who will connect with us live from her own home, Zooming. After she's done, and Tina, who is there in the office, and we'll have time with all of you and Tina and Elizabeth to talk about some of our reactions and share, because that's super, super important. And Elizabeth, would you go ahead and tell us your story?
Great. Thank you, everyone. Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I care for my father, who's going to be 100 years old in November. I'm his only child, and he has only distant extended family, so there's no one else. I'm also an interfaith chaplain and a grief recovery guide, and I'd like to share a bit of our lives and 5 lessons that I've learned by being a part of the caregiver support group here at Daybreak. In 2019, I moved in with my then 95-year-old father, John Becker. He had fallen while visiting my home, and while he was not seriously injured, he spent 7 weeks between the hospital, skilled nursing or rehab, and assisted living before he came home for an extended 2-month recovery with in-home physical therapy. Dad's primary things that he deals with are that he's old. He also has coronary artery disease, which makes him a little dizzy and unstable. And he has long-standing but well-controlled prostate cancer and bilateral glaucoma, or rather, these were the things that he had. But he was living very independently and had a very extended social circle. And when all of this happened, it also happened that my 20-year marriage was ending at the same time. So Dad and I had a critical conversation in a local cemetery, and we call it the cemetery talk. And we decided to throw our lots together and start a new life together in a rented home in Oakland. I happened to have been in the midst of my practical training as a clinical chaplain, and I was trading pretty fast and loose on my father's independence and capacity that was, quite frankly, a marvel at his age. What I missed was that his sight was failing in one eye. It also became clear that he had long deferred maintenance on his skin, feet, teeth, and hearing. And I began to get a clearer picture of how not so independently he had been living. And so I became more directive in his care and took over family finances completely, including, as Gayle mentioned, getting all of those documents updated. Very important. During the pandemic, we jokingly called our antics together John Becker TV, and we tuned in daily for new episodes managing health, elder finances, setting up a home. I balanced motherhood and caregiving. And we eventually took an epic cross-country road trip, and we were planning for life's inevitabilities. We are in a good amount of complex and anticipatory grief, And even so, we tried to make even the difficult stuff lighter with laughter and love, pretending some days that we were characters in a zany and touching father-daughter sitcom that was, on some TV channel of our own making. As I prepared for next steps in my new spiritual care career, it became clear that with the risks of the pandemic, I would not be able to both pursue that and care for my father in our home. It became clear that he was losing all of his sight in his right eye and likely would lose it within the next 3 to 6 months. And I was struggling to get a critical part of my training completed while finding out about veterans resources, county resources, learning about senior finances, and trying to secure housing for my father and myself. I was also having to be more on point for my father emotionally because he was grappling with the reality of progressively losing his eyesight, and it was with it his tinkering and fixing hobbies. In 2021, so 2 years ago, I found this caregiver support group through a class that Daybreak offered on being a caregiver. And eventually I became part of this caregiver support group. I've been a member now for a past 2 years, and I attend probably once or twice a month because I'm balancing this with my grief practice that I do to support others in grief, and also through other veterans benefits and my father's health care, and the work that I'm trying to do to continue to keep myself abreast of what's going on in the world of spiritual care and grief recovery. I also have a very deep contemplative practice that supports my ministry and my ability to hold the ground when talking with others about loss. So here's what I've learned about how to take advantage of caregiver support groups. 1, jump in. It's never too early and it's never too late. When I first started, I knew I didn't need much support. Ha, 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 that's all I have to say. Because eventually I really leaned on the information, and particularly some of the voices in our caregiver support group allowed me to understand what was available for my father in the veterans world. 2, get to know the social worker or group leader directly. They will be able to help you move quickly into new resources with people and programs, and with others in the group who are likely to be able to support you with information. I'm super grateful to Susan and to Karen, who are outstanding leaders here at Daybreak. And so I encourage you to join us. 3, prepare now for the next steps. Even though my father really does not have what you would call cognitive decline in the dementia or Alzheimer's ways of thinking about it, he does suffer from severely decreased executive function and some cognitive decline that's related to his grief over losing his eyesight. He knows that he's getting closer and closer to the end of his life. And he's both relieved not to be dealing with so many complexities in life, but also quite grumpy about losing his independence and autonomy. Being in relationship with other caregivers who are dealing with loved ones who are further progressed in the cognitive decline space has helped me to know how to position my ideas and to get my father and I on the same page about any number of issues. 4, prepare to make room in your life for some really great new friends. Some of you in this group have really been stalwarts in my life, fixing jewelry, giving me advice. Know that your other friends that you have that are in the pre-caregiving side of your life are going to be there for you when eventually you move out of caregiving as a part of your life. But the reality is that most of them don't understand anything about what you're going through. The people in your caregiver group, though, will, and they have information for you that you can't get anywhere else, and support too. 5, find and grow meaning for yourself. This is a form of self-care. And so what that means is take care of your body, take care of your nutrition, take care of your own finances, but also try to keep something going that is about the flame in your heart. And so for me, one of the things that I'm grieving is the loss of right now being able to practice in my new profession as an interfaith chaplain in a hospital or hospice setting. But I am, as Ram Dass says, here now. And Dad and I are making a film about our experience called The Dad Project. It's never too late. So for now, we're telling the story of how my father, nearing 100 years old, is still living a life filled with learning and adventure, We're talking about the essential nature of family caregiving and how important it is to access benefits that he needs now and he's entitled to, that makes how he lives and how he fathers me even better. It's also my story as a business leader who becomes an interfaith chaplain and caregiver. It's a story of resilience and reinvention at any age. And of course, it's a love story. We're making the documentary in pieces, and we're excited right now to share a piece of our first installment, a 10-minute highlight reel called 8,300 Miles, the moments that matter from our cross-country road trip in 2021. So Lawada, can you share that now?
You ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. All right, here we go, everybody.
Morning. Good afternoon.
And good evening. Hi there, family and friends of John Becker TV. Hi, John Becker TV family. We are on Highway US 160. We have made it to Ohio. Last night we were in Columbus with John Becker. I mean, my father and his cousin named John Becker. And today we are just now 21 miles away from Oberlin, Ohio, where my daughter goes to school. Do you have anything you want to say, Dad?
It's just beautiful, beautiful country, and the nature is so raw and mighty that it makes one feel insignificant at times. We're in Utah right now.
Arizona.
Arizona?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because the roads are weaving back and forth across the state lines, and we are on a shortcut. But the shortcut still is pretty good traffic on it. And we're in a very southern tour tip.
We're in the northern tip.
The northern tip of Arizona and the southern tip of Colorado. And it is really cinematic.
Cinnamon? We're gonna have cinnamon?
The movies.
Oh, cinematic.
Cinematic.
But the hills are also the color of cinnamon. It is Friday, day 10 of the John.
Well, thank you very much for taking a minute to watch some of the movie. We're excited to have seen it. There's a whole story about how it's being produced. But it makes Dad and I smile to know that some of our story is going to help others get access to the support they need as they come into family caregiving and into whatever end of life or ongoing situation there is. Just know that your story matters, and we encourage you to tell it first to yourself and to your caregiver support group, and then maybe just like us out to the world. So thank you very much, and much gratitude to the people at Daybreak for making my life with my father possible.
Unmute myself. There we go. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's just a joy to have you actually share this live and this sweet project with your 99, almost 100-year-old dad. These sharings were so deeply important in the depth of them. Really am so grateful we end on this note with you there, sharing just this very open-ended, open-hearted, and difficult place that is coming together really in this moment, just really so recently. I mean, it's very powerful. I'm hoping that well, I'm asking people that are still with us, participating, either sharing or watching, if you have questions or you want to input something, or certainly Karen, I would love it if you would add some of your thoughts to this, what this has been today. That would be lovely. So that we, really, I would like people to share if they have something to share, of course. Cleo has written in the chat her feelings, and I think you can all see the chat, but she says, thank you, everyone. This has been very touching and educational. I love you all. And, I really see that the themes of taking care of yourself and finding a place where you can share with people that understand because they're going through it. That just every single one of you has really, really in your own stories shared that so powerfully, so important.
I just wanted to summarize how touched I am by everyone's story. Oh, thank you. I hear it in increments in our support groups. I see you, I know you, and your journey, and I feel humbled to be able to be a part of your journey. What I noticed as a theme for all four of you today that shared is the importance of taking care of yourself. We call it caring for the caregiver. Much of what we talk about in our groups is the journey of what that means and the challenges. But it really touches my heart that the message of, I'm going to take care of me. Tina just talked about the oxygen mask. We use that as an analogy when you're on an airplane and you don't give your baby the oxygen first. First, you take care of yourself so that you can take care of those who need you. And it gets upside down when we're focused on this constant care of someone in great need. And it's easy to forget that our needs are tantamount to how effective we can help others. And so it really moves me that everyone is in their own way finding ways to take care of themselves and to listen to what their heart needs and to listen to what their purpose is in life. And not to define themselves totally as a carer for someone else. So I'm greatly humbled by the courage, the wisdom, the humor, the willingness to share at a very, very deep level with people you don't even know, but then from your heart going forward, you know them very well. So thank you. Cleo.
I want to say to all the caregivers and to you and Susan and Karen, that I thank you for helping me, because even though I took care of my mom for a long time, it was her passing. I didn't have caregiving group to meet with while I was caring for her. And I didn't realize that I had so many issues still from being a caregiver, that I'm glad and thankful and grateful to all of you who helped me take care of things that I needed to take care. And I can honestly say it was the group also helped me get my legal paperwork in order so my daughter don't have to suffer and everything. And I owe that to all of you. And I just want to say, you really are effective while we're caregiving and after we're not doing it. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
And for folks that couldn't be here today, that hopefully will have a chance to see this webinar that we've recorded, please feel free to reach out to us at Daybreak. And as we said, we have a lot of resources, and really most powerful of which really is a support group. So whatever you need, more questions about power of attorney, all of this, please let us know, and we'll speak to you individually, and we'll feature some of your questions in our webinars and newsletters. So we're here for you. Thank you so much for coming. Love to you all. And as Karen said, we just have deeply moved by who you are and what you've done, what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can end the recording now. Thank you, Lawada, so much.